This is one of the more potentially busted maps for my army, given that Laglor in the start zone can cover that entire 7 hex plus the 3 hex and the 1 hex height on top of it, the grass sitting way in the back there, which means that if I were to be facing bonding melee on this map, I could just run Q9 and micros up on that hill and then just sit there and absolutely torch any kind of melee that came within 9 range of me, which is ridiculous to think about. However, this game is not against bonding melee, and so we won't be able to employ that exact strategy here. We are facing Arrowgruts with Krug and Mimring. The Cyprian stand-in is actually Marcu for the purposes of this game. Unlike last round, this time I don't think there's much merit to moving Laglor, because from where he's at, he can cover all of these spaces that I've marked in red. Right, so going into round 1 here, we are going to lose initiative, which is pretty good for us, because it wouldn't have been able to get too many shots off on Order Marker 1 anyways. And we're going to see Nico lead with Krug here. I don't like Krug taking this long road around the outside here. I think this is a mistake. I'm going to be able to get a full round worth of shots on Krug, mostly from height, before he has any chance at all of getting to my start zone, and even then I'm going to be able to use Microcore to screen him off from being able to get to Q9. So I just don't think this is going to pay off with the upside that Nico's hoping for. That far glyph over there is the initiative glyph, by the way. Now it's back over to me. Right now I'm counting out spaces to the initiative glyph. I want to put a Microcore somewhere where I know it can get to the initiative glyph on my Order Marker 3 to at least have that threat in place. And the other 2 Microcore that we see here are just going to start making their way up towards max height. We're able to get some shots at Krug here, I believe, because 9 range is redonkulous. And if I remember correctly, we do a wound or 2 to Krug here. Although the cards are not in screen, so it's hard to tell. And now back over to Nico. I think Nico's going to come to the same realization that I had initially thought, which is that Krug should not be going along the flat, long outside route. And we're going to see Krug climb back up towards high ground here, trying to limit the amount of Microcore shots that can be put into him. We see a few Arrowgruts move up, including taking the movement glyph, and take a few ping shots, which miss, and back over to me. That spot is nice because I'm within range of the Arrowgrut on the move glyph, but any Arrowgrut that retakes that glyph is not within range of me. I have all 3 order markers this round on Microcore. I don't see much purpose in leading Q9 while Krug's still alive, and this is a pretty good map for micros to abuse the 9 range on. I develop micros a bit more towards that hill on the far side, and then kill the 1 Arrowgrut on the move glyph. Krug now manages to get out of line of sight of that 1 micro I have on max height in Laglor's aura, and the Arrowgruts retake the movement glyph, but don't get any kills. The big issue for Nico here, though, is that he spent 3 turns getting Krug somewhere he could have gotten to within 2 turns, and as a result didn't move Mimring up at all, which means I'm going to be able to get heighted shots on Mimring now in the start zone sleeping. Potentially back-to-back by grabbing Dagmar here. I sometimes lay down figures like this to mark that I'm going to be using them as an activation, whether they moved or not. I actually don't take the initiative glyph here. I'm not really sure why, in hindsight, watching it back now, but I didn't. And I get 1 shot down on Mimring, which does a couple wounds. Going into round 2, no reason for me to put any order markers on Q9 here. Micros are already in good spots, and if I win initiative, we can pop Mimring really hard. Mimring is going to move a little bit out of the line of fire here, just sort of running away, trying to avoid getting killed. And a few other Arrowgruts move up towards height. I don't really have any great shots here, so I try to avoid giving Mimring a good fire line and take a few shots up, killing 2 arrows. Mimring finally comes in and takes out 1 Microcore, but is in a vulnerable position not being on any kind of max high ground. I have a couple heighted shots down on Mimring, and do manage to finish him off, and then also get that Arrowgrut on the movement glyph. Nico's in an extra bad spot now because this map is pretty bumpy, and it makes it very slow for Krug to try to transverse the high ground if he's afraid to give up height, which he has to be against my Microcore. So we see Krug move as far as he can safely, and the Arrowgruts support him as best they can. This time I do go for Dagmar, hoping for the switch from round 2 to round 3. If I get the switch here, I'll be able to engage Krug with that nearest microcore on high ground, and be able to lock him up a little bit while getting good shots in the process. However, Dagmar chooses now to remind us all that it is not an auto-win of initiative, and we do lose the round 3 initiative. Krug is going to get as far as he can safely and engage that one microcore. That micro actually manages to stealth armor both Krug attacks, which is pretty sweet, but he does end up falling to one of the arrowgret pings, so it doesn't end up mattering. I wish I knew exactly how many wounds Krug had right here. I don't have his card in frame, and I don't remember exactly. I know it was a substantial number, but I'm not sure exactly what it was. Broadly speaking, though, my approach here is if I have height on Krug, shoot Krug, otherwise take arrowgret pings as much as possible to try to burn an order marker later in the round if I can pull it off, or at least force the other arrowgrets to retreat back hella far to avoid that happening. And Krug comes in further. He has to take low ground now, but he does get that one microcore that he's engaged with. I have 2 micros left here. I put the second micro that's further away from Krug up on that max height spot way back on that far hill. Just trying to spread out my micros so that Krug can't get them both at the same time, and I have 1 shot on Krug, which I take. I return fire, but we do not get him. I put 3 order markers on micro and 1 on Q9 here. I did that because I was so likely to win initiative with Dagmar, but having lost it now and lost those first 2 micros, my order markers are actually a little bit more dicey than I would have liked them to be, given the fact that I am up in this game state. Going into this round, at least. Krug is now very angry, and he comes in and easily dispatches that 1 microcore. I did have all 3 order markers on micro here, but rather than taking the shot at Krug, I elect to bring that micro back into my Startzorn to help wall off against Krug being able to engage Q9. Because I feel like my only loss condition here is Krug gets to Q9, and I'm able to delay that a turn by the micro coming down and helping Laglor create a wall, going along with the natural dip and the water barrier that we have aiding us in the moment. We naturally flip all our order markers to Q9 at this point. We lose initiative, and we're really glad we put that microcore there to block Krug, who comes in and swings mightily at Laglor, chopping his head off easily. Priority number 1 is ensuring that Krug can never reach Q9 within 1 move, and priority number 2 is doing damage to Krug beyond that. We move Q9 into a position where we can accomplish both of those goals, and we do manage to finish off Krug. With Krug going down, the rest of this game is mostly a formality, although Marcu could theoretically do something frustrating to us. But the Swog Riders and Arrowgruts just really can't touch Q9 in this game state. Q9 moves up a little and takes out that 1 Arrowgrut. We're just being as careful as possible with Q9. Trading slowly is fine, but exposing him to unnecessary risk is not, so we're fine just taking out 1 piece a turn while they come at us. However, Nico then backs up everything towards itself into a little pod on the far side of the map, and we're okay with just sending Q9 into that pod. We'll take out a lot of it, and it's just 1 attack back per turn into us, so it's not that big of a risk. So Q9 does move in that direction, though to do it safely, it is going to take 2 moves. We do get the initiative switch here, so we get those back-to-back turns, and Q9 makes it over to the far side of this hill, and Queglexes into that pod, killing all 3 of them. Now that Nico switches to Marcu, my main goal here is to back up in a way that I can develop all my figures towards some semblance of a defensive pod that Marcu has to come towards to help provide a little bit of extra defense towards Q9. So Q9 begins to back up. My goal is to try to establish that position on that back hill where Q9 takes the 2 hex height and the microcore takes the 1 hex height on top of that. So that's what I'm aiming for with my general movements here. Marcu hits his first betrayal, with which I simply send him backwards and away to give me more time to set up that positioning that I want to get. The micro then reaches max height where he was trying to get to, and Marcu comes in and engages Q9. If I could have gotten to that height spot within 1 move, I would have taken the LEA to do it, but it was 6 moves to get all the way up there, so I couldn't quite make it, so instead Q9 just stands his ground on even ground with Marcu for now. I actually pivot Q9 in a way that Marcu can get height on him, but if Marcu does get height on him, then Q9 can re-get max height on the following turn. Instead of that, though, Marcu goes for the microcore, which requires an LEA, and does get the micro. So instead of going for height, Q9 pivots in a way that Marcu no longer can get height on him and just Queglexes up. We don't quite finish off Marcu, so Marcu comes in and attacks Q9. And Q9 returns fire with Queglex, finally finishing off Marcu and ending the game.